Welcome, everyone, to the live stream. I have the fantastic guest here today, the fantastic Helen Santer from Build Studios, who I am very jealous of right now because she is in Build Studios, which I am a resident of, and you've got the beautiful air conditioning going there, haven't you, Helen?
That's right. There's no 30-degree temperature to worry about here.
Well, I'm working from home today for the live stream, which is rather ironic. However, I do love Build Studios. And I found out about Build Studios 3 months ago when I was looking for a shared working space for the Architecture Social. But I'm sure there's many people that might know of it, but also people that are not familiar will Build Studios yet. So it would be amazing, Helen, if you briefly tell us who you are and also tell us about Build Studios.
Okay, so I'm Helen Santer. I'm Chief Executive of Build Studios. And as Stephen mentioned, we're primarily a co-working space, but a co-working space with a difference. We're solely for businesses in the built environment sector, but we're also a social enterprise. So effectively, every bit of money that we rent from selling desks goes in to support education and outreach programs to broaden access to young people or for groups who may otherwise be quite underrepresented in the sector. So it's a virtuous circle, and it's going well for us so far.
I agree. I love it as well, and I love being part of it. So on this show as well, because we're live streaming, I know it's the first time we've done a live stream as well, Helen. We're going to have a bit of fun, but anyone in the audience can ask us questions or share their thoughts. And if you've been to Build Studios, you can drop us a line as well. But Rowan says working from home is the new norm. I kind of agree, but at the same time, I was personally looking for an office to get that magic. And I love coming in, working at home sometimes and coming into the Build Studios. So what I'm going to do briefly is I'm going to show one or two images so that people can have a little bit of an idea about, here we go. So this was in the good times. Oh, sorry, I've cut you out there, Helen, haven't I? There you go. So there you're back. So this was during the good times before the pandemic. But basically, you can see the space here. And this is a fantastic show. But here we go. Here's inside Build Studios. And it's split on 2 levels, isn't it? So we're in Waterloo. And, oh, there you go. We've got the fantastic Marcy on the couch there. But it's a really great space. And I love it. So do you want to tell everyone a bit about it right now? How many people can be in the office?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, so we've got space for about 50. So it's pretty small space, about 3,000 square foot, small but perfectly formed. And we, in terms of the co-working offer, it's a kind of sort of fairly standard hot desking, or you can book a desk for yourself as well. It's all shared workspace, and that's quite deliberate because what we focus on very small businesses or one-man bands in the sector. And the aim right from the beginning was to say, actually, it doesn't matter if you're working on your own. It's great to create a space where you can have access to the same sort of skill sets as if you're working with a large practice. Yeah. So we quite deliberately sit architects alongside planners, interior designers, engineers, landscapers, and it means that, you know, even if it's just a chat in the kitchen, or it can be kind of more formalized than that, you can run your ideas past people. And also we've had some examples where our members have collaborated as well. So we've had a really nice one recently where we've got a one-man band property owner, one-man band planner, and a one-man band architect who've worked together, and they've just secured planning permission for a rooftop bar in London Bridge. So when we were first setting up the space, I know, and in this sort of weather, what better place to be? I think when we first secured the space, we sort of hoped that kind of collaboration would happen. Weren't necessarily sure whether it actually would happen, but it seems to be working, which is great. So we're we were kind of set up as, probably with this audience, most people will know what a Section 106 is, but the space occupies a site that used to be an old office block and a pub, and it's now very fancy student accommodation, kind of duplex apartment with
rivers. Let me go to Google Maps for us.
Exactly. Yeah. And when the space was converted from office to student accommodation, the developers were asked to retain a section of it for workspace. And in true Section 106 style, there wasn't a lot more detail given than that, really, except that it should be an affordable incubator space for startups. So we were really given a blank canvas and then had to kind of come up with a proposal for the space. And that's sort of what prompted Build Studios, really. We thought,
I'm up there, aren't I, Helen? I'm over here. Woohoo!
that's your desk. We're going to
Yeah,
get a little blue plaque made for you, Stephen.
I know, but it's a great space, and I thought it's just good. Well, Google Maps has done us really well here as well, but it's really fun. I love the plants, and of course, everyone's doing the 2 meter lock. So everything's social. Is it socially distanced? Is the word I've got before? I know we're in Freedom Day right now, but you've been very responsible about it all, and I imagine it's been an interesting time for you as well, dealing with it, huh?
Yeah, it has. It has. I think a lot of shared workspaces have really suffered over the last 18 months. But actually, what we found is that we've sort of cautiously started reopening again. And now we're basically fighting people off with sticks because everyone has suddenly decided that they need a couple of days in the office a week. And actually, to your commentator who said earlier, work from home is the new norm, I'm not quite so sure I agree with that one. We're finding that sort of hybrid arrangement is what people really want. So, we can do a desk course with a 1 day, 2 days a week, and that seems to be what the majority of people go for. So Tuesday, Wednesday, there's not room to swing a cat. We're so busy. No one seems to work Fridays anymore, but there's a lot of people who they like working from home, but actually some days you've just got to escape the washing machine and the kids and all of the other, and the 30-degree heat. And people like to come in and actually have a bit of interaction.
I love it. I really enjoy it. And it was a happy accident because I couldn't believe that someone had made a co-working space for the built environment, because I used to be in a WeWork, Helen, and there's so many businesses that are in these spaces, and I imagine it could be tempting just to have a co-working space for anyone. But the built environment, you're right, it's so many fantastic connections there. So I was in the office yesterday, right? And so I was going to bring up the list that we had before, but I met the fantastic John Snow with his planning business. So John Snow, I had to tell John, you're on the live stream. He's probably there going like, Steve, what are you doing? But I love John's business, and he was telling me all about it yesterday. And I think it's really great because he works with a lot of architects, and this is the true form about what the space is, isn't it? So we're going to get John's business on the Architecture Social so he can talk about it. And also me and him, Helen, talked about, well, online on the Architecture Social platform, it's really good to have people like John who can, offer advice to architects as well. So I imagine you've seen a lot of this collaboration happening, haven't you, within the space?
Yeah, I mean, it can be really informal, but it's just, I think, there's a lot of self-confessed geeks in the built environment. My background is city centre management, and sort of basically I deal with the sort of back end of the process. I don't design spaces. I deal with managing what's been put in place and working with business community and residential community to make the space tick. So, I mean, I'm borderline obsessed with all of the detail that goes with managing a space. So I love things like a hanging basket bracket, and I love a drop curb, and I love all of that kind of thing. But if I tried to talk to my friends about that, as you can imagine, they kind of glaze over fairly quickly. But the good thing about this space is you will find a fellow nerd who loves local plans, who loves brackets and drop curbs, or who can actually just, you can just run something past them. So we find there's a lot of that kind of informal collaboration that starts initially, and then what's really nice for us is when you see that it's actually led to paid work, because really that's what we're about. There's no point in running these things if it's just a nice chat. If it can actually help new businesses bring some additional money in, then great.
Yeah, I love it. And so, I mean, it was funny you were talking about literal stuff, because you'll laugh, because you've seen me, I think the second or third time we met in the office, you saw me pulling my hair out about setting up my company's accounts. And normally when I'm in the office, I'm frantically working on the Architecture Social website. But we've had some really interesting debates about how I imagine that the way of the future, and I agree with you. I think that there'll always be an element of digital form. So, but then also it's going to be really quite exciting because there's an event space in terms of Build Studios that can be used for physical events. So, of course, we'll want to make sure everything's safe. But I think that there's that really nice hybrid which is coming up. But just before we crack on, Helen, we've had one or two more comments come in here. So Brian has said that co-working spaces were popular in the 1980s. Not as focused as this one. Lovely place to work then. Well, Brian, you should definitely pop down. And if you're in Waterloo as well, because I'm in the offices a few days a week, but if you ever let me or Helen know, and if you want to pop in and have a coffee, and safe, and you can bring your mask and everything, and all respectful, then you should definitely pop in. And Satish says that he loves the idea as well. So we've got a bit of, so far, I think everyone likes the idea. So well done, Alan, for setting up, built environment co-working space. But before we talk about that a little bit more, I would love to know why you decided that we need this, because I think there's a need for it as well. But I imagine your career brought you to this point, and I would love to know a bit of the backstory about yourself, Helen, and what brought you to the point where you wanted to set it up.
Okay, well, I'll give you that there's a long and shaggy dog story answer to that one, but there's a slightly more pithy one. I've always been completely obsessed with towns and cities. And when I was a kid, I used to go and visit my godmother who lived in Manchester, and used to love getting the train, and you'd see they call them property porn now, but it's all these wonderful old warehouses and kind of station sidings and things like that. Yeah. And as the kind of incredibly cool teen I was, I would look at those and think, oh, I'd love to get hold of those and convert them into something. We grew. I lived in the sticks when I was little as well, so it was the same with any kind of old barn I saw. I'd always sort of think, oh, that could be something so much better. And when I was at school, I found, and actually this was a key driver in setting up Build Studios, because, we've spoken a bit about the workspace, but actually the reason why we're all here is to try to introduce young people to the sector and introduce people to the sector who might not otherwise have even known that these jobs existed. And I thought, with my, very sort of privileged background, and I should have had access to this kind of information, but even in the context of a school that was kind of reasonably geared up towards careers education, no one could tell me a thing. And I remember having conversations where I'd say, I really like towns and cities, what's there for me? And I was just met with blank looks. No one could even suggest a profession like town planning, which is a really, really old and established profession. And slightly sadly, actually, I think that's still the case from some of the kids that we speak to. So when we were setting it up, I saw this as an opportunity to do something really quite interesting, actually, where we can have a kind of physical space. Physical spaces are lovely, but through my work in urban regeneration and kind of city management, physical space means nothing if it's not for the people inside it. And for what that space does and for what that space means. So I thought, actually, in a kind of microcosm, without being sort of too highfalutin about this, we've got a space that has a function, provides much needed, affordable, subsidized workspace for small businesses who would otherwise be priced out of central London. But also we can create this ecosystem whereby the members in the space can go into local schools, take part in our outreach program, and actually kind of really raise awareness about all the amazing jobs there are in the sector. So it was a kind of circuitous route getting to Build Studios, but I'd also become really, really frustrated by the sort of siloed working in the sector. So I've had quite a varied career. I started off just through really a chance meeting, as often happens, ended up with some work experience that led me to a job in a Quango that set up the first business improvement districts in London. So I know quite a lot about bids. So I did my sort of public-private partnership experience. And then I went to work for a private consultancy for a while. So I worked for Colin Buchanan and Partners in their regen team. So that's a sort of, primarily transport planning, but that was particularly looking at evaluating large regen schemes up north. And then I got a job in a local authority. So I worked for the Corporation of London for a while in their economic development team. And so in the space of a relatively short period of time, I'd had experience of public sector, private sector, and that kind of murky world in between of partnership, not-for-profit, social enterprise. And actually, I like the murky bit. I like that kind of tricky area in the middle that tries to bring together multiple players to kind of create a bigger picture. And so I got approached by the chair of the Waterloo bids, who knew me from the days, my Quango days, and he asked me if I wanted to have a go at actually running it. I was sort of ridiculously over promoted at the time, but I sort of felt like it was something I really, really wanted to do. And I think the thing about bids is, you know, you get thrown into an area, you live and breathe it. But what I love about it is, particularly in an area like Waterloo, you've got these huge kind of public sector players like Transport for London and the Department of Health, big charities here, you know, CAFOD, Christian Aid, lots and lots and lots of small businesses, independent retailers. And the role was to try to kind of bring them together around a common aim for the area. And I think that's where I got this idea that it's not a new idea. I'm talking like I made this up. But actually, you know, if you get lots of different voices around a table, that you can solve some much bigger problems than if you try to do it alone. So with Build Studios, we thought, actually, let's go specific. Let's make it built environment. Otherwise, it's just an exercise in letting desks. It's just bums on seats, and that's not exciting to anyone.
Yeah.
But if we create it focused, we've got an opportunity to bring like-minded people together and actually start addressing some of these issues around the built environment, but in a more kind of holistic way. And then we were approached by the landlords who said, look, do you want it? And at the time I was running the business improvement districts and said, yeah, we'll take that on. Sounds interesting.
Yeah.
Not with much of a business plan in place. But it all kind of came from there, really. And yeah, we've been open 4 years now. And I think, you know, we're still alive after the last couple of years. So we're pretty happy with that. And there seems to be a real demand for the space, which is great.
Yeah. I mean, I was quite lucky, actually, because I was in the right place at the right time. And actually, I was having a meal and I was looking for an office. And so I just viewed an office in Peckham, and I worked with the architects on it. And it was the marketplace in Peckham, and it was beautiful. But I just felt like, I don't know whether my business would fit into this. And because there's an element where, on one hand, the Architecture Social is an online community website, but on the other hand, it's deeply rooted with an architecture. And I was kind of like, okay, it's all right, but I'm not too sure. And I remember looking on Google, and I was like, oh, do you know what? Because Waterloo is connected to Lewisham, where I live, I'll have a quick little look. And I was on Google, and it was like Build Studios, a co-working space for the built environment. And I was like, I think I'm hallucinating. I was like, I didn't know such a place existed. So I rang up Marcio, who works with you, and I was like, oh my gosh, I'm going to be there straight away. And then I basically came down, and then we met and we had a nice conversation. But what I love as well is, because I'm not strictly, while I worked in architecture, there's a sense of that, in one sense, this studio is perfect because it's the built environment, and I love that collaboration, and I love that you've got town planners. I love that you've got people launching products. You've got me with the online community, and as well as that, you've got architects and you've got engineers, and we've got the housing developers, isn't we? I think Dash is effectively a developer, in-house architect developer. So there's quite a variety. I imagine you've seen lots of different businesses over the period of the last 4 to 5 years, but at the same time, what was interesting is when you told me is that a lot of the people that joined have stayed in the studios for a long period of time. And I can see why. But have we got anyone still from when it started then, Helen, who's still there?
Yeah, we have. Yeah, there are a couple. So Andrew from Druin, who you'll know, he's one of the kind of the old guard, and a couple of the other guys have been here from the start. It's interesting actually, because I think like a traditional incubator, the whole point is that you take on a new business, you kind of build them up, and then you kind of let them fly. But I've always found the term incubator deeply patronising, and I think particularly in this sector, you know, we're not talking about people straight out of university, although we do have one or two of those. In the main, it's people who've been in practice for kind of 10 years and they're setting up on their own. So they're a startup, but they don't, they know how to run a business. The support needs to be a lot more kind of practical than that, really. So we grappled with that a bit. We were sort of saying, should we hold on to people for 3 years and then tell them they need to go elsewhere?
No, don't kick me out now.
No,
I found that.
well, we don't.
That's not fair. I'm just enjoying it. Yeah, it's on one hand, it would be nice. You always want more space, I think, but there's always an organic balance as well, isn't it? When maybe a business it's like the right time to leave the nest, then they can. But if it kind of works and it's complementary.
And I think, it's quite self-selecting in that respect. We've had a couple of prop tech firms coming through the space. And I think, when you've got that level of investment, it'll be 2 people 1 month, and then suddenly it's 4, suddenly it's 8, suddenly they're team of 32 and there's no way they'll fit, and that's fine and that's good. I mean, it's kind of slightly eye-watering from a cash flow point of view, but it's great, and we should be really pleased when that happens. But I think we've got to counter that with people who actually want to stay small. There's an assumption, I think, sometimes that all businesses want to grow, and that is simply not the case. I think a lot of firms want to stay kind of small and bespoke and kind of a bit more niche, and that's really good. And I think that's actually where we're really finding our own niche.
Yeah, I hear you. Well, I brought up this little line here from Jason, who is also a friend of the Architecture Social and was on last week's live stream. But there's a nice point in here. So, Jason, you should pop in when you're in London. And what I thought was really good about this point as well, Helen, is because while you have the residents, and hopefully one day I'll now be part of, I'll be part of the alumni. But there's an element of flexibility with this. And what I like is, Jason, you can pop in. I mean, if you just give a little bit of notice or whatever, then amazing. But there is an element of, because there's 2 floors, isn't there, in the space, and you have some resident desks up the top, but there's an element with the event spaces, and I'll bring up some images here from let's get up some images now, but you can, the stuff that I've got before. So downstairs, I'm just looking for, maybe it's better I go back to Google, because we can then pan around the spaces. Let me bring this up. I've cut you out again, Helen, sorry. But downstairs, so this is also downstairs, isn't it? And so you've got the meeting rooms here, which are really cool. So you can be like Alan Sugar in there, and this meeting's in the back room. I haven't actually used that meeting room yet. But here's the entrance, actually. So it's right next to Waterloo. I mean, the location, in my opinion, is insanely good. I love it. And I do like Waterloo because you're next to the market, and we can touch upon that in a bit. But here you can see, it's a bit of a grainy picture from Google, but we're spinning around with all, and you can see that this downstairs area, this is pre-COVID, I'm imagining, but you can see a lot of people in the space. And so there's quite a nice, and this is a mural on the wall, but here we go. From the entrance, you can see this space down here. There's an element of flexibility. So I've had 1 or 2, conversations down there. You can spread out. It's a really nice space. So how does that work for anyone listening then, Helen, if they wanted? Can people book impromptu meetings and stuff, or what's your plans with that? Go for it.
No, I mean, we can. So we have a sort of various membership packages. You can. So if you're a member, you can basically book your own rooms as and when you need them. But if any externals just want to kind of pop by and book the space, they're more than welcome to do so. It's I wouldn't quite say it's a drop in, because obviously we're sort of with issues around staffing that and all the rest of it. But no, exactly. But no, we're always happy to see people. And our conundrum at the moment, actually, Stephen, you might have some ideas on this, and I suspect some of your followers will as well. I alluded earlier to the fact that no one seems to work Fridays anymore, or if they do work Fridays, then they certainly don't really want to be in town.
I'm in Acrid Lowry's office on a Friday, and also. Well, that is kind of true, but I've heard that there was, especially speaking to John before, there was definitely a nice crowd in the space, which go down the pub down the road on a Friday as well. But I tell you what, Alan, speaking out loud, I think that's Fridays in this kind of new world, that is a good day to work at home, you know?
I agree, but then for a space operator, that gives us a bit of a
Yeah.
conundrum because we've got this space and we want to do something with it. And I'm curious to see what would tempt people in. We've been
Maybe,
toying with the idea of like sort of CPD sessions or portfolio reviews and,
yeah,
chucking a breakfast. What's going to make people come into London on Fridays again?
well, anyone who's listening, drop us your thoughts now while we talk. I will give you my thoughts, but if, for instance, someone is here and they have some ideas on what would be fun and what would be good on a Friday, then do drop us a comment now. Thinking out loud, because we've kind of talked about it, haven't we? Little bits and bobs, but I think that we do CV and portfolio reviews in the Architecture Social with students. Oh, there you go. Jason saying CPDs is a good idea. There you go. Get the CPD sandwiches, Alan. Get some CPDs going. But I think what would be nice is there's two things that come to mind. And I'm basing these on what I've seen within the Architecture Socials, because there has been a little bit of a craving for an Architecture Social. So I do think that there is a nice aspect of maybe doing something like that. But the other part I like is that, here we go. We've got an art exhibit. That's not a bad idea.
Yeah, happy with that.
Yeah. Well, you could have like a resident artist or something, couldn't you? And they go on the wall and then you reveal them once a month, Alan. That's a good idea. Or once every 2-3 months or whatever. But I do like that we could do the CV and portfolio reviews in person. I think that's cool. Where me and you can get our flags out, rock up downstairs, and people can drop in and get hope constructive criticism, and then people from upstairs can join us maybe if they want to, if they're free, you know what I mean? And that could be a good one. So
no, I think that sounds like a winner.
Well, you've got two here, haven't you, from the crowd? And then so I'm saying the CV portfolio review and the Architecture Social. So there we go. There's 4. I think that deserves a round of applause from the audience, isn't it? Yeah, it's always tricky though, isn't it? Because we just don't know with things changing. But on the topic of, look, there's so much positivity, and I love your vibes of being positive, and I want to keep it positive as well. But actually, you have survived a remarkably tricky time for co-working spaces, which has been the pandemic. So do you feel a bit now relieved, Helen, that there's a little bit of light at the end of the tunnel?
Absolutely. I mean, I'd love to say it was never in doubt, but I think anyone who runs any sort of commercial property would know straight away that I was lying if I said that. I've got a wonderful stat which I'm going to look for you actually while we chat, but just about the amount of commercial property space that's been relinquished. Here you go. So I met the other day with the head of commercial leasing for a very large landlord, and he gave me this stat that 25 million square foot of commercial office space has been relinquished in the last 18 months.
Wow.
Which is just astonishing.
I'm not surprised.
No, exactly. And I think for the big guys, that is really, really concerning. But actually, for a small operator like us, particularly one with a niche and a social purpose, is actually a real opportunity. I mentioned to you earlier before we started that the Charity Commission have indicated that they are now going to grant us charitable status, which is something we've been working on for 2 years now. Thank you.
We need one more clap. There you go. Charitable status is amazing.
No,
sounds hard work.
It does sound like hard work, and I think it's a lot of admin. But what it does mean is that we're then suddenly in quite an attractive position to landlords who have got space. They're wondering what on earth to do with it. Got an enormous business rates liability. And, we're in a fortunate position that demand at the moment is exceeding supply in terms of what we can offer. So we're now looking at sort of next steps for where we take build studios, and I think there's some really interesting openings for those companies that have outgrown the space and want a door they can lock at the end of the day, but they don't want to sort of leave the build studios community. I think that's quite an interesting one for us. But also I'm quite interested from a sort of town centre regeneration point of view. Is this a concept that could translate, say, to a retail unit in a high street? Could we do a kind of cafe space where we do some, drop-ins for young people who want really good careers advice and combine that with a sort of kind of co-working offer as well. So there's so much opportunity out there at the moment. It's a kind of, after a slightly hairy couple of years, I think we're sort of definitely back in the right direction.
It's really interesting because where I was working before McDonald Company and many others as well, so recruitment on commercial offices went down, but in the last 6 months there's been a resurgence because it's all about, I think, as well, because if you've got existing floor plans and like an office of 100 desks is now going to be 50 desks because people are working remotely, then maybe what you're talking about, there's scope there, isn't there, for like mini satellites. And WeWork have had a massive culture shock, but I think that they're new because I was looking at them as well before I found Build Studios, and I didn't like there was a nice part about that you could go to any office, but what I like is that in Build Studios, I've got my own desk and there's a level of flexibility. But maybe, as you say, I imagine, Helen, there's like Build Studios, because it's already plural, it's Build Studios. You could have, I'll cut you out again, but you could have loads of mini Build Studios all over the city, right? That'd be cool.
Yeah, why not? It's part of my plans for world domination. I think that's where we're probably heading.
I think you're onto something. So, well, I think like anyone that's got any ideas around that should drop you a message. But while we're on that topic, because I love the fact you talked about Section 106s and actually part of my dissertation when I did do architecture was on Section 106. So I understood when you said that. But it's what's interesting about Build Studios as well is that there's close connections with Waterloo, and you touched upon the schools and you've got the career program. But what I also like as well is you're deeply involved with the marketplace, which is next door, which is called We Are Waterloo. So how did that relationship come up? And do you want to tell us a little bit about them and a little bit about yourself?
Well, it sounds like a big exercise in nepotism, but I used to be CEO of We Are Waterloo for 10 years,
Ooh.
which is the business improvement district.
That would explain it then.
That would explain why we know them so well. But yeah, so I'm kind of, the Waterloo is one of those areas in London that kind of gets its claws into you. And then you can never, ever leave. So
yeah.
Just to warn you, Stephen, you're never leaving Waterloo. Now you're here. It's how it works.
Well, I used to sneak preview on that before we move on. Is that I used to work very closely at EPR Architects, which is just in Westminster, so that I used to always go across the bridge to Waterloo and go to one or two of the bars and the culture, and you got the theatre and everything. So I absolutely love Waterloo. It's amazing.
Yeah, it's a great community, and it's a really embedded local community as well. And as I was saying earlier, I think that I'm really interested in what goes on in buildings, because actually it's the people that make the space, and I think it's that for me is so important. And if we do look to expand and build studios Bristol or wherever it is we happen to be, it's no point in me just swanning in and pretending I know the patch. You've got to get right under the skin of an area and work out what the specific needs are and who the key players are. And I think that's how interesting stuff happens.
Yeah, I agree. I think, look, it's amazing. We are Waterloo, and I really appreciated my £5 off my lunch voucher when I joined as well. So I'm a massive fan. But I love this career program as well. And this is a recent development you've done. And this is a specific one, haven't you, where the teacher came in, talked about all the stuff that they're doing as well. Do you want to briefly tell people about this latest endeavor that you guys are doing?
Yeah, sure. So we've had a careers program in place for 3 years, but it used to be, it was great, but it used to be a case of arranging volunteers to go in on a weekly basis to talk about what they did. We worked with Oasis Academy South Bank, which is an outstanding academy school about 4 minutes down the road from us. And it was really well received, but actually working with the teachers, what we found was that not to put too fine a point on it, they're knackered and they're overworked. And the content was great, but it was requiring quite a lot of work from the staff to develop and kind of oversee the projects that the kids were doing through the scheme. So we got some funding from the Walcott Foundation, who are a charitable grant-giving body who work with disadvantaged young people in Lambeth. And that was basically to kind of scale up the project, and we were keen to basically develop some new content for the kids, but stuff that would just be really practical, really straightforward, so that any teacher who was asked to deliver careers enrichment, which they have on the curriculum at this school, could literally just pick up the pack and teach it without having to do serious amounts of preparation beforehand. So we've worked with the Museum of Architecture. I imagine many of you will be familiar with that. The MOA, yep, great group of people. And they have a new sort of subsidiary called the School for Creative Thinkers, which runs all of their kind of youth and school programs. And we commission them to produce the content for us. So the program, basically, there are two themes to it. One is architecture and design, primarily interior design. And then the other one, which we're trying very hard to make interesting, is the development and planning one. We've discovered that planning for 13-year-olds is a little bit of a challenge.
A little bit harder.
To try and engage their attention. But it seems to be going well. And they had a ferocious debate last session about the gentrification of Elephant and Castle. So they're really, really switched on about it. But the aim of the program as well is also that it's something that can be replicable. So at the moment, we work primarily with Oasis South Bank, but we'd like to roll that out to other schools as well. But it's been a real win because it's so flexible. So we've got these packages that the teachers can pick up and just kind of run with. We can send in-person real people into the school if they want to go in and say, I'm so-and-so and I'm an architect. That's really, really valuable to the kids, just seeing real people who do real jobs coming in and kind of chatting to the kids. But we've also produced some careers videos as well. So we'll have a kind of set example of this is so-and-so, he's an architect and a planner and an interior designer, so that even if we're in places where we can't physically get a volunteer, they can still play these to the kids and give them a bit more kind of real experience of kind of hearing from someone who's in the sector. So it's been great. And I mean, I have to say all credit to the school who've run this during a pandemic, but we reached 91 kids last year through the programme, which I think is kind of astonishing given everything that happened. But it's been really great actually getting that off the ground.
I love it. So there's so many parts to this, and why I think it's the magic formula is that we've got the co-working space, which for me is actually a really practical solution to where my business is right now. I enjoy the social aspect. I enjoy the opportunities which will come out of it. And it was a pleasant surprise as well to hear about all the amazing stuff, such as the career developments program. And why wouldn't we want to help? These as well, and get people inspired about the built environment, because there's so many amazing jobs out there in the industry, and I think it's so cool that you are doing it. One thing that came to mind, Helen, with the town planning, is that one of the reasons I studied architecture was that I was obsessed with the video game SimCity, which is kind of not so much architecture, but more city planning. So I'm not saying it's quite town planning, but just thinking out loud, we might have something in there. But maybe we should do like SimCity sessions in Build Studios. That could be another Friday event.
There you go. That's Fridays again. We're going to get too booked up on Fridays now, though.
I know. Well, we do need to start, don't we, together? It's a joint effort in Build Studios. We're going to think about filling up that event calendar. Obviously, it's a balance of being safe, but also where do I want to go? It's about being safe, but then also it's nice to have stuff going on, because otherwise I'm just going to feel like I'm, staying at home all the time. We all want to meet people and enjoy in a safe distance. So we'll work on that there. And
we had our first little event the other day actually, and the sort of excitement of actually hearing the chink of wine glasses for the first time in almost 2 years. I think everyone was kind of pretty happy with that actually, just to sort of see people in person again for the first time in such a long time.
Yeah, no, it's definitely cool. I enjoyed it as well. And look at this. You need to go national. Yeah, we've got. But Manchester, actually, I studied in Manchester, lived there. Seems like a good choice for another Build Studios, actually.
I would agree. That's been suggested before, actually. So I think we need to get on the train again and go and see all these old railway sidings of my youth, which I suspect look rather different now.
Well, look, I think it's amazing. We've covered a lot already as well. So everyone here should check out Build Studios, and everyone can drop you a message as well. But this is one of the first live stream kind of podcasts that I've done. So look, thank you, Helen. But I think it's only fair that you get live to ask me one or two questions as well that you have. I know we chat, and I know we had a little chat before, but is there anything you want to ask me while live on the live stream?
There you go. You see, you didn't prep me for this beforehand. Otherwise, I could have come up with some
Deliberately.
snorters for you.
Yeah, that's why I don't tell you, because otherwise you'll have like a list of like 4. And you'd be like, "What, Steve? What are you going to do?"
Another thing.
Yeah.
I have a question for you. I think it's interesting actually that I'm always quite open about this. I'm never the sort of person who likes to pretend that running and starting a small business is smooth, and some would say I'm kind of hypercritical about what we do here. As is always the case, you forget all the stuff that's brilliantly and you focus on the bits that aren't going so well. But it's very interesting that you, along with many people, found out about us somewhat by fluke, happened to be looking for space in Waterloo, and I would like to know, from your kind of extensive sort of social media reach and expertise, if you had a tip for us as to how we could do a bit better at telling people about who we are and what we do. Where would be, and we could only focus on one thing. What would that thing be?
Okay, 2 things. So I love the reason we're doing this is because as well, I love the message, I love the agenda, and the whole point is that as a business hub, we should help each other out. So I think that a lot of people would be happy to help build studios when they understand it. So I think it's getting out there a little bit, and obviously we're live, we're talking now, and I think you lend yourself well to these kind of platforms. So I do think that now I think there's the physical aspect, and then there's the online aspect. And so my head, as you know, when we talk in the office, I am all about search engine optimization at the moment, which is an absolute nightmare. It drives me insane, but I can see how it's so important. So for anyone listening to this live stream as well, especially if you're running a small business, or like, for instance, when we were talking a bit before this, Helen, it's like, it's a full-time job what you're doing, running the studios. And it's a full-time job as well, doing the programs that you're doing. So you have 2 full-time jobs, but sadly, marketing is also almost like another full-time job. But I think maybe what would be good is that if we start tying in those awesome events that you do, like the small get-together, if we now start broadcasting them, and we can do that on the social, inviting people in, I think that organically people are going to find it. And my bet is that when people are aware of it, like when I was, they're going to be like, oh my God. So I think it's just getting out there, and there's no right or wrong way. I think it's just constantly doing it. I remember we talked about it on the social, and you're like, oh my gosh, you're always putting something out there. And I think that actually half of marketing is just constantly banging the drum, because there's just so much noise out there. There's so much happening online. There's so much on LinkedIn. You've got me, you've got all these different things, and how you cut through the noise, I think, makes a big impact, but also the amount of times that you broadcast your message. So I think we will do some events together, and we can open it up to the general public at a time, and they can come in and enjoy the build studios on a theme. But that's it, really. I think that when you're in the studios, I think it's perfect. I wouldn't change anything. Just got to get your name out there, really. So that's my question. That's my answer about build studios. So you didn't ask me anything tricky about the Architecture Social. Do you want to ask me anything about that?
Let me think. No, I'd like to know. Okay, so I'm going to ask you the same one as I sort of ask for myself.
Yeah.
Which is, what if you're being hypercritical? What do you think is the thing about Architecture Social that needs to grow and get better?
Good question. So I think that I'm seeing the use of it evolve. And so during the pandemic, the community forum was used much more because people were in isolation. But even myself, I think we're all kind of craving that semi-digital, physical formula. And I think whoever cracks that, it's going to be really interesting. So I actually think, and one of the reasons why I like Build Studios is that we can have that conversation going, because I think that the Architecture Social, if it's just all Zoom events and stuff, it will kind of stagnate. And actually, I think that some of the things I'm proud of on the Architecture Social is when people use it to find jobs and they use that resource. It's a bit like your career development scheme. Something when someone gets something out of it, to me, that's really enriching. So I think that that's the next big thing for the Architecture Social, is getting that balance, and that's why I made it a thing of. I wanted to go into the office, but in theory, I could have run the Architecture Social from my home. But I wouldn't want to do that because you miss out on a lot of qualities, So I think that this is the next thing for the Architecture Social evolving. But the other thing that I need to be really careful of is, and like 2 weeks ago, because I had so much going on, Helen, I had an invite to an event which went through to my personal email, and because I was so busy, I missed it, and I was really upset because it was an event I really wanted to go to, and it involved the community as well. So I think the one thing that being critical of myself is that I need to get the balance of prioritizing things, and like also I've got loads of podcasts which I need to release, but they take like an hour or two to release. So I think I need to encourage people on the Architecture Social and help people out with their projects. So maybe it's like helping people who want to do study groups and stuff like that, rather than me doing everything. So I think that's the short answer. So get the digital and physical thing going and inspire people in the community to do what they want, but they can do what they want. And also I need to not over extend myself or not do too much things, because when I was doing a clubhouse and this and that, then the risky thing is when you're spinning so many plates, Helen, and maybe you can advise me on this because you do a lot of this stuff, then you can drop a plate, can't you? So that's my next thing. There's a lot of positives, but that's my current juncture in the road. So any advice while we're here before we go would be amazing. How do I do it, Helen? How do I balance all this stuff?
Well, I wish I knew, because I suffer from the same affliction, but I have concluded
no.
I have concluded that, you can't, there are lots of brilliant small organizations out there, all run by brilliant but also exhausted individuals, and I think the only way out of it is that we all start working together and actually sharing some of the burden, because that is the way that I think all of us can get bigger and better resourced to start doing all the fun stuff that's stacking up on the mental to-do list. But there are only so many hours in the day, so I think we just need to get our heads together and see what we can do together.
I agree. Well, I think you're right. Well, us doing events together should be two birds with one stone. And actually, I think that the combination could be a good fit. So we will work on that. But what I would love for people to do now, because we're probably coming up to the lunch session, at the end of the lunch session, and I've really enjoyed this, but what's important is I want people to know where they can find you, where they can find Build Studios as well. So I'm going to bring up the website really quickly, but while I do that, and this is the website, buildstudios.co.uk, if someone's interested in discussing anything with you about what we talked today, Helen, where can they find you?
So best thing to do is drop me an email. So it's helen@buildstudios.co.uk. And I'm always happy to hear from people. Any suggestions, any ideas for collaborations, just get in touch and it'll be good to talk.
Amazing. So there we go. Is that right? Helen@buildstudios.co.uk?
Yep.
Yeah, we'll keep that up for 1 minute. I think that's a really nice rundown. So we've covered today what Build Studios is. We've also learned a little bit about your history and what's up and coming next. Anyone that's listening and enjoyed this, drop Helen a comment. Helen is also in the Architecture Social, and she is on LinkedIn, so you can drop her a message in both platforms. But Helen, I am going to leave you go now. Thank you so much for joining us on the show. But stay on here while I close the live stream, and let me just bring this back, and I'll wave goodbye. But thank you, everyone in the audience. Drop Helen a message, and I will see you probably next week in some shape or form. Take care. Bye-bye. Okay, I need to end it. Whoop.